19th. Okay, we'll start over. This is the August 19th meeting of the Bristol Planning Commission. It is 7:02. We do have a quorum.
That's back.
So we will start the meeting and call it to order. Actually, it's the second item is to review the agenda for additions, removals, adjustments. I have none. Is there anybody else that has anything?
I do not.
Okay. Then on to public comment. I don't believe we've got any public here. Oh, we do. Is there any public comment? Hearing none, we'll move on to new business. New business? Or business? So the
Business.
business. So the first item underneath 4A is to, there, we ginned up a couple action items, motions regarding, our understanding of the whole ADU question, aligning our local box and 4412 being a state statute. So nobody has, since I wrote this up and nobody has an objection to me as the chair making a motion, I will do this. So the first motion is, it's up on the screen as well. Following are interpretations made by the Planning Commission of State Statute 4412 and the Town Unifying Development Regulations regarding accessory dwelling units. Number one, the criteria for determining adding an ADU to a structure, primary or accessory. Specific setback dimension standards for the primary structure shall be used for any accessory structure to be used as an ADU, even when there is a conflict between dimensional standards for the accessory structure. B, an existing accessory structure that is compliant as an accessory structure, but would be non-compliant when the primary structure criteria is applied to consider an ADU requires a waiver. C, a pre-existing non-conforming accessory structure requires conditional use approval. Number two, it is possible for other state regulations, including but not limited to Act 250, as well as private agreements, to be in conflict with ADU regulations. A, for Act 250 findings of fact that limit development to single-family units, the applicant needs to get a determination from the Act 250 jurisdiction on the process to put in an ADU. For deed covenants or homeowners agreements, it is considered a contract freely entered into, and approval needs to be given accordingly. Number three, for an existing non-conforming specifically in a zone where residential uses are not allowed but are pre-existing, ADUs can be added to an existing non-conforming use within a district where residential uses not allowed as a conditional use. Number four, in state statute 4412, there is no allowance for an ADU in a new non-residential building, accessory structure, only an existing one. A, new and existing are used interchangeably. Number five, other uses are allowed as part of the conversation of a primary or accessory structure for an ADU. If an ADU is made part of an existing or new accessory structure, it does not prohibit other uses or functions in the accessory structure. While it can be considered to, it can be part of while it can be centered to, it can be part of a single permit application. The above interpretations are not intended to be exhaustive review of state statute 4412 and the town unified development regulations, but to clarify areas of ambiguity as the planning commission has identified for administration of UDRs. And I'd like to also add that these interpretations are effective at the current time of approval by the planning commission. So that's the motion. Entertain a second.
I guess I have a question. I'm sorry. Back to number 4.
Oh,
Um,
we need to motion in a second to put it on the floor.
Sorry. Okay, I'll second that motion.
Thank you.
I just need clarification. The way that's written to me, it says there is no allowance for an ADU in a non-residential building, only an existing one. Does that mean only an existing non-residential? And then they turn around in the next, in A, they say new and existing are used interchangeably. I guess I'm confused by that.
So you're talking about item 3?
Item 4.
So in 4412, it does not specifically talk about putting an ADU in a new non-residential building. It refers to an existing one. And so through our discussions primarily with Adam, he was indicating that new or existing are interchangeable through that statute, so that it shouldn't be interpreted that when it talks about an existing accessory structure, that it couldn't be applied to a new accessory structure as well.
Okay, thank you. That's all I needed clarification on.
Are you comfortable with the language?
Yes, now that I understand it.
Any other comments, questions?
Questions of if this motion is approved and passed, what happens with this? Where does this live?
So I think my intention is this is guidance for the planning and zoning administrator.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have force, if you will, or authority to make rules, because that's up to the select board.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, we can interpret regulations as they're written. So the intent, from my point of view, is to clarify the discussion and have a guideline for whoever is the planning and zoning administrator to rely on, so that we don't have these, oh, I thought it was this, I thought it was that type thing.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
It makes sense. I think can get messy. Was there any discussion with Adam on how something like this would be handled or put forth, or implications, or
No, we gave,
or Kevin Brown or anybody?
no. So we did review it with Adam,
Mhm.
but he didn't comment on it.
Okay.
So I'm assuming that it wasn't earth shattering or anything like that. And you're right,
Or we broke them.
or we broke them. Yeah, we may have broken. And you're absolutely right. We cannot affect policy with this, but we can give guidance.
Okay.
And maybe we should clarify that somehow.
Yeah, one of my concerns with this is that it's written, and I get that it's written in direct response to the questions that we had in that conversation last time, but trying to read it, unless you're familiar with that, it's not crystal clear based on how it's structured. If you just pick this up, you're trying to go through ADU and 44.2 or 12, sorry, and then you pick this up and read it without the background. It's not as clear, kind of like that question Shannon just had about the existing or
Right,
new.
yeah.
That's my concern with it. And then once it's approved, does it get maintained? Or is it just filed and?
Well, it could very well be filed, but that was my intent to, as far as the maintenance thing is, we should make sure that this is based on current regulation that will change,
Mhm.
yeah. So that's why I added that last little bit, so what do you, how, do you wanna make a motion to amend then?
To be honest with you, Kevin, I apologize. I am not prepared to make a motion with specific amendments at this time. I started going through it and trying to digest it and get ahead of it, and I didn't have time to get back into it and dive into it.
Okay.
My concerns are just some of the wording could be kind of cleared up for clarification, so it doesn't offer any questions or trying to interpret this document in the future. But the number 1 section on that, I thought that the B and C sections about that, unless I misunderstood, I thought a lot of that was that it was allowed even if it didn't meet that stuff, but I could be wrong, because there was a lot of discussions about this is okay, or you can't do add conditional use or things like that.
Yeah, and AZ and I talked about that at length, and I think one of the things is that we've been maybe lax in the past and not really looked at whether it is compliant. So in the case of an accessory structure, you can have an accessory structure mostly on sideline setback that is compliant, but then when you apply for an ADU, all of a sudden you've got to come into the primary structure setback, which is more restrictive. So there's a process that needs, so you can't just give it a permit,
Okay,
you know?
because my from our conversation with Adam, when we have these situations of 2 different setbacks, what I walked away with may be different than what others walked away with it, that it's going to be the least restrictive of all of it, any combination of it. If that was what the guidelines was kind of how I walked away with it, because that was how the primary structure setback got applied as opposed to the accessory structure setback. In some of those other cases, it's whatever's the least restrictive.
Yeah, and I pitched for that myself a lot of what I pitched for was that, and I didn't end up seeing it that way, because it would be the primary structure setbacks are king for a queen, depending on how you want to look at it. And if you've got conflicting things that allow you to put that accessory structure specifically closer to the property line on a side yard, you can't. You have to pull it in, it becomes non-compliant, so then you go through the waiver process, which is a BZA exercise.
Okay,
So,
Well, I mean, I agree, it seems like if you're gonna make it. I mean, even though I find this, also, can I just first say 1A seems a little confusing to me, but. The dimensions of primary structure shall be, what are the conflicts? Well, I mean, so it's basically what you're talking about, I assume that, but it seems a little confusing language. But if they say everything must be the same as with the existing residential structure. then that would mean the setbacks too, yes, as this is basically what we're talking about.
Mhm.
But that's not what really they seem to want in their act, would you agree? I mean, what, but like, how can, like. We can't like bend to the ADU for both of these, one way, both ways, right? It should be. Stick to the structures, a 20-foot setback or 15-foot, whatever. That zone is, yeah? You think,
But you can have, and here's where the rub comes in, is you can have, because you've got different, so front yard setback. Is less restrictive for an accessory dwelling unit because you can come all the way right up to the face of the primary structure.
that'd be the same.
The primary structure setback is less
Yeah.
restrictive.
For an accessory building.
Yes.
That's the side yard, that's the problem.
Right.
So if you put that accessory building in. You've got that extra
But
little
you're-
wiggle room to get it over there.
Yeah.
But then you or somebody else comes along and says, hey, I wanna put an ADU in there. It's a compliant building, so. They can't do it because it doesn't meet the primary structure setbacks,
Side yard setback.
which is the side yard setback in that case.
Yeah, well.
And then, so then you gotta go through this waiver process and have it reviewed and say, yeah, it's not a big deal, or yes, it is.
If those are,
Has that
those
been
are not,
happening
those are not.
with the
not one.
I
conversions?
think so. AC, what, can you weigh in on that?
Yeah, I didn't quite fully hear Rob's question.
Has the waiver process been occurring for conversion of accessory structures that don't meet primary structure setbacks?
Not currently. That's what was gonna be kind of for that's what has generated this whole debacle is one of those questions of like in the past, if the pre-existing accessory structure meets the side yard setbacks, then it was deemed compliant. But with this reading of 4412, where it has to meet the principal structure dimensional standards in the HDR, where the side yard setback for a principal structure is 15. That is
So
it's following like by saying we're following the principal setbacks. Best example would be the HDR, where the current dimensional standards say principal front yard setback 40 feet from road center line, accessory setback 20 feet behind the 40, but the side yard and rear yard for that is 10 for accessory, and then for principal it's 15. So if you have an ADU, you have to meet the principal setbacks.
What's wrong with that? That's simple.
Well, yeah, you gotta meet this principal setbacks, but all of a sudden that accessory building that yesterday was compliant.
Oh,
Is
you mean,
not anymore if you want to put an ADU in it.
oh, the existing accessory.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Which is why you need the waiver to say I need relief from the dimensional standards and I'd like to have an ADU in this building, but to get a waiver for the 5 feet of essential like the 5-foot difference between the 10-foot and the 15-foot setback, and that's where it would go to DRB review. There would be time for public comment where folks can say, oh, I am fine with this, or I don't want this because of this. And that's the process I've identified for that Kevin and I worked through for this process.
yeah,
Izzy, do you have that flow chart handy?
I do.
May help.
one of my concerns is as our general, don't say guidance, but consultation with Adam. He was implying that the intent of this is to make it possible to put ADUs in anywhere and everywhere that generally meets in whatever least restrictive categories there are, because that was the intent of this. Granted, everybody's going to agree this is very poorly written and executed. But my concern is one of my concerns is passing this on interpretation, basically. We gotta make sure that the UDR and everything else aligns with that, cause I don't know that, I didn't go back to read through that to see if that mentioned accessory structure. Conversion, setback, etc. versus principal and what applied or didn't apply.
So. So it would be in the zoning regs.
The UDR.
Or in 4412 for trumpet. So the thing and anybody else jump in if if I'm talking too much, but the thing I interpreted. I didn't get from Adam and AZ has gone and talked to. The town lawyer, she's talked to the state. And they all are consistent with this. You can put an ADU in anywhere that you have a single family dwelling.
Mhm.
But it's gotta be in this footprint, the same as the single family dwelling, which our deviation with an existing accessory structure can be a conflict.
Right,
So that's what the issue is.
right, the leeway to put a shed or a garage a little closer to the property line than a house, because the impact of it is now a problem with, based on conversion.
Which, yeah, so that drives it to a variance and is.
Why not just make it a rule and you don't get to do that? I mean, do we really wanna be building houses even closer than we can? I mean,
So,
just to go in
That's
another
where we're
direction.
trying, that's what we're trying to work through with
Yeah.
this.
so we had, when this question came up through the select board public hearings. We, as the planning commission, made a recommendation to the select board to make the side yard, the setbacks the same. To avoid this confusion.
Yeah,
They chose not to because they thought it was overly restrictive for
Yeah.
accessory structures. So,
And there was also a concern of making grandfathered future non-conforming things.
right. So they chose not to do it. So here we are
Yeah.
with a set of
and this is the whole
regulations.
problem with oh yeah, I wanna build a garage. Okay, 10 feet, then the next month, oh, I wanna build an ADU on top, oh, it's only 10 feet away.
So then you have to get a waiver. to
Yeah,
do
but
it. And
the
actually,
waivers
Kevin
are
Brown
not-
interpreted, come to think of it, Kevin Brown interpreted. To the select board at that time of their public hearings this way as well.
This way as well, yeah.
So I don't think,
But
I put the flow chart up that kind of helps visualize what that first motion is kind of saying.
do you wanna walk us through it?
Yeah, so you start with a single family dwelling, owner occupied, compliant single family dwelling. Let's go the easy way first. New detached building. You place it within the principal setbacks, so 40 feet from the center line and 15 feet from the side and rear yard. If you have it within that building envelope, I can issue a permit for it. That's following 4412 and our regulations. You want to have an addition on your single family dwelling. If it's a conforming single family dwelling, if it's within the building envelope of the setbacks, same kind of deal. I can move forward with administrative review for a building permit, change of use. If the single family dwelling is not conforming, for example, if it is too close to the front yard setback, then it would have to, and they're looking to have an addition off of it, they have to go to the DRB because our non-conforming use statute or regulations state that you cannot move, alter, enlarge, reconstruct, one other word.
increase non-conformity.
Yeah, so you can't do any of that with a non-conforming structure or use without conditional use approval. So they would have to go before the DRB to get approval to add on the addition of the ADU to their non-conforming single-family dwelling. Once they get that approval, I can issue the building permit for the new addition ADU. if there's an existing accessory building and that accessory building meets the principal setbacks. So again, if we use the HDR as an example, 40 feet from the center line, 15 feet from the side yard, it's within that building envelope. I can issue a permit for the change of use of the second story garage into an ADU and the and the construction that ensues there. If that accessory building meets the 10-foot setback, and is within that 40-foot setback as well, which it would be if it's at 60 feet, that's still within that's more than a minimum, but it doesn't meet that 10-foot or that rear yard, then they can request a waiver from the DRB to essentially say, can we put this ADU that is 5 foot closer than the principal setbacks, essentially. Once that gets approved, I can approve the permit for the construction, the building, the change of use. Lastly, if the existing accessory building is non-conforming, similar to the single-family dwelling that's non-conforming, it must go through conditional use approval before it is altered, moved, enlarged, changed in any way. So then it would have to go through conditional use because it's a non-conforming structure. If it gets approved, I then issue the permit. Does that make sense? Are there any questions?
The new detached building,
Yep.
when that is multi-use,
A multi-use new detached building.
yes.
If
What's
it's
the, if it's primarily an accessory structure that doesn't meet the principal setbacks? Does that ADU does not get approved or needs conditional? As part
well,
of it?
if they want to put a new detached garage and have the ADU use in there, they would have to meet the principal setbacks for that entire building. Or they could go through a waiver approval to
But
put it
that,
closer.
but that would, in some of these areas where the accessory structure has an additional setback than the principal, that's
Mhm.
where,
I apologize, that last part got cut off.
so that's that, when it's basically an accessory structure that has, in an area where the accessory structure has additional setback from the primary front setback, say, that's where that's a problem if it only meets the principal setbacks, right?
Correct. So like the accessory structure would have to
So you're saying that you can't put an accessory structure function other than an ADU
This
closer to the front.
it gets into the multi-use, right? Which was where some of the problems have come in the past with the single additional building that is multi-function, multiple uses. Of if there is a 40-foot principal setback, and then the accessory structure setback is 20 feet behind the principal. Does the ADU make it so that accessory structure only needs to qualify for the principal? It's even though it's an accessory structure? Because it's
Okay.
multi.
Yeah, sorry, I'm with you now. It took me a moment to catch up. I'll blame it on Zoom lag. But in the flow chart, that new detached building would just be for an ADU. So if you're just doing a new detached ADU, you'd have to meet the principal setbacks. The mixed use. That is a good question, Rob. Oh, that's a good question, Rob.
That's where we've had some of our debate in the past.
Yeah.
But on this topic.
Well, another one for me, if it's time to speak up, is new and existing. I tomorrow build a accessory dwelling, not a dwelling unit, but just an accessory building. And then a year after, this is now an existing accessory building, and I wanna build an ADU. But really, the whole plan is just to build both, I mean, clearly, we can accept that. I'll admit it, and, so maybe there should be a date, like, dated, like, between new and existing. Because at the time of this writing of these regulations, after that, you build something, it's new.
But I think if I understand what you're saying, Slim, is you would go into that top flow. You know, if you put your accessory structure in
Yeah.
to the setbacks at that time, knowing you're gonna put an ADU in it a
Yeah,
month later or
or
a year later,
whatever, yeah,
you would have an existing accessory building. You would go to the next set of boxes and it meets accessory setbacks, which is a yellow one,
okay.
which drives you to a waiver with the DRB. And
But,
if the
okay.
waiver is approved, then you,
Okay, give me the difference, please, I'm sorry, between waiver and a conditional use hearing?
A conditional use hearing is a I in the regulations in our review notice procedures, there's section A, which is for subdivision, conditional use, variances, appeals, um preliminary plat review, and that gets posted in the newspaper. It gets the 15 day warning, it must be done at least 15 days prior to the meeting. And then for type B is waivers, site plan review, downtown design commission review, all other types of review before the DRB. And that's only 7 days of at least 7 days prior. So in my mind, I consider conditional use as a major DRB review, while waivers and site plan are more of a minor DRB review. As they have,
Well, excuse me, I see it that way too, but isn't it a kind of a major change to put a house next to somebody's house that close? That's like major, that's not moving a garden shed 5 feet closer or something, right?
so I think. The conditional use, as I understand it, AZ, maybe I'm wrong, is all of a sudden there's a certain amount of performance criteria that you step down through.
correct.
Whereas with a waiver, you're talking about, oh, well, here's the lot line here that you're okay with today. But you're 5 feet out, it's not a big deal,
Yeah, it's okay.
nobody seems to care.
So I don't know, I don't wanna go back to that one, but yeah, that caused a lot of people problems, and it's because a house is right next to them and it makes a lot of noise, a lot more than a garage or a shed. These are really different uses, I mean, seriously different uses. And I don't see why the criteria for building on top of my garage would allow me to be any closer to the line, especially if it's a new one. If it's an old one, okay, but if it's a new one, it's just
So what's the difference between an old one and a new one?
well, existing, we're giving a break for an existing one, that's all. I mean, we wouldn't have to, but I guess I'm willing to do that, but I don't like the idea of somebody building and then knowing they're gonna put a house, basically be putting a house right there. And if we think the setback for a house should be 15 feet, then I think a setback for this new ADU on top of a garage should also be 15 feet. I guess that's what I'm feeling right tonight.
But we,
Yeah, well, that's what I'm feeling right now. I think it's just, why is it less? You know, just because somebody does it in 2 steps, etc.
we have no control over that.
We do.
No, we don't. The select board is the one that controls that.
We can't put in like,
Uh,
it's, if you're building after
So
2025, it's
we
new.
put forth, or Kevin's talking about, we put forth the recommendation
Yeah,
to maybe simplify this. Make things the same for all the setbacks
Yeah.
between accessory and,
so do we need to talk to them again or something?
well, it went through and they said, we're gonna leave it the same,
Mm,
And then it got voted on by the residents.
right? So that's where we're at,
yeah,
okay?
okay, yeah, well. Oh,
That's the process. It goes
Yeah.
from us to them, then
Okay.
eventually, then to the voters to get voted on, approved or denied,
and
and then it's
approved.
enacted after
Mhm.
review.
Alright. So, um. So I do hear your point, Rob, that, when you have two uses, does that require you to have, does that allow you to have an accessory structure within the footprint of the primary structure? And that allows you to manipulate the front yard setback
The accessory structure.
on the accessory structure.
Yeah.
Just thinking about it as we've been talking, and thinking about this flow chart. The accessory structure, it would also be essentially either a waiver or a variance approval if they wanted to put that mixed use building closer, like put an accessory building and an ADU, build it at the same time, and place it closer than the 60-foot, they would need a waiver for the accessory structure instead of the reverse of a waiver for the ADU. If that's
Mhm.
where my mind is thinking, where it's kind of the inverse. If so, the ADU, if you place it 45 feet in this mixed use building, that meets the principal setbacks, but the accessory structure setbacks wouldn't conform. So they would need either a waiver or Apollo. No bark. Apologies. Apollo's really adamant about ADUs. They would have to go through a waiver to not meet that 60-foot.
Yeah, okay, so I see that, I can see that path, but now the issue is, we don't accommodate that in the motion, we're entertaining, or your flow chart, so.
Yeah.
I think what we should do is entertain a motion to table this.
I'd
Or,
Make a motion.
so do we, I don't know, do we,
We're in
say-
discussion right
we're
now.
in discussion. So we got a motion on the floor, do we have to act on this motion, or can
We
we
got-
just
we-
make a
we-
motion to table?
That would be the action on that motion.
To motion, have a,
The motion to table it
would be,
until
okay.
next meeting,
Yeah,
next regularly scheduled meeting.
yeah, why not?
So I'm gonna make a motion to table this first.
Could I
mo-
make one, like, this one should be so simple, I'm sorry. On 3, is there a missing word? It is just. For an existing non-conforming. Non-conforming lot.
I think that's supposed to be single family residence. But, that's one of the reasons I'm gonna make this motion
Okay.
to table this. Motion of the first motion until next regularly scheduled meeting.
Do I hear a second?
I'll second that.
Slim seconds, any discussion? All those in favor say aye, raise your hand.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Okay, we'll table it and chew on it a little bit more. I think it's a good conversation, Okay, so. So I
The
think,
second of that, right? Now we're on to the second.
I
motion.
think, I would recommend that we table that as well, because it's kinda. It's a follow on to the first motion, so, I think we need to get. The concept of what we,
Of our interpretation.
of our interpretations. Understood, and then we can make a recommendation of And basically this second motion is to deal with conflicts in the zoning regs based on our interpretations, so I think it's premature to do that.
Okay.
Do we have to? The motion hasn't been made, so do we have to even consider it?
There actually, let's see, we did not have a action on this.
Other than,
It's not on the agenda.
so I think it was just
It says action interpretation of ADUs and statute, which was what was labeled as first motion, but the second motion in terms of adjustments to the UDR section 404 was not on.
technically it wasn't on.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
So we will table what was presented as second motion till next meeting anyway.
yeah, and I don't think there's action required.
No. I don't think-
Because it was not, there was no motion there. So I think the next thing we do is talk about, and we had, Adam gave a presentation of, I don't have the right terminology, but Act 181 is driving a certain amount of regional planning map exercises, and he presented that at the last month's meeting. Left us with these maps to chew on and get back to him by September 1, I believe it was, if there's anything we had a lot of heartburn with on the maps. And if I understand this, and AZ chime in, is these are planning maps at a regional planning level. They will offer guidance to us at the town planning level for our town plan. But it is guidance, it isn't thou shall. Is that fair?
So I didn't interpret it that way when I read through it. I guess I'm concerned that they're saying if we adopt it, there's this new land use advisory board that would have to pretty much have a say in any changes we make to anything on our maps. I mean, I just read through that a little bit ago. Hang on, let me see if I can find that section. Methodology, there it is. It's under the methodology. And they talk about, yeah, the land use review board under processes and considerations. I guess I was feeling, having read through this, I was feeling like they were saying that's what was going to happen if we adopted their plan, but I could be interpreting it totally incorrectly. So that's under the process on page 2 of the methodology document that we had. And I can read that if you want.
Is that in the first section, Shannon?
It's on page 2, it says processes and considerations. Let me see if I can find the exact thing that caught my eye. It just says this standard methodology and process RPCs will use to ensure consistent statewide delineation of FLU areas eligible for Tier 1B status, which is what I'm not sure how we get Tier 1B status unless we opt into it. And the designation of Chapter 131 of this title, RPCs have developed the guidelines for the FLU areas in order to achieve a consistent statewide approach. It is recognized that there are limited instances where it may be necessary to deviate from these guidelines in order to address unique local or regional circumstances. The RPCs, as part of the submission to the LURB, which is the Land Use Review Board, will highlight and explain deviations from the guidance and how the resulting future land use map meets statutory requirements. And I guess I'm trying to determine, does that mean if we adopt this, does it only apply if we adopt it or not? And still,
My interpretation of this, Shannon, was that the Regional Planning Commission has to do something here, and they're offering us to give input on it and work with us. But basically, there's already the existing future land use. Basically, their zoning map, right? Regional planning zone. The state also is going to use in conjunction with determinations for Act 250 tier review and area-based stuff. And my interpretation of this stuff was that they're trying to get it all consistent language, so it's not the same type of zone, is termed different things everywhere and has slightly different meanings across the state. But as far as I kind of read it more like the land use review board would be doing a review of the regional planning mapping, much like the regional planning commission does a review of our mapping and changes to our stuff. That's how I read through it, but
And then, so the tier 1B status is the loosening of Act 250 requirements so that you could put up to that areas that fall underneath tier 1B would be able to put up 50 units of development before they'd have to go through Act 250.
If I could further jump in, just off Rob and Kevin's points, in order to be, a municipality has to opt in to act, into these exemptions. The RPC does have to develop these maps, so even if the select board doesn't choose to opt in, the RPC still has to make these maps. If that provides further clarity.
So the process, AZ, you were talking about would be the process if the select board wanting to designate, I think it amounts to our downtown planning area as a tier 1B. That would have to be affected by the select board.
Yes, the select board has to opt in for the exemptions in order to be eligible to be part of this. The select board has to say we're cool with joining the Act 181, but the RPC as part of Act 181 is required to generate these new maps.
Does that clarify or help or make you more scared, Shannon?
More scared. I'm still I guess we have our map and regional planning has their map and the state has their map. And I'm guessing, I'm trying to figure out at the end of the day, when we're doing our zoning and our town plan, if we don't opt into Act 181, are we still using our maps or do we have to use theirs? That's what I'm
so
trying to understand.
we still have our zoning maps, Shannon. We
Yep.
still have zoning districts, that all stays the same. All this is the regional maps, which there's already the current ones in that package. You'll see it said current FLUs, and basically it goes from the orange area to the pink area.
Yep.
With and that's just kind of a rebranding of that same area and some more detail on that based on their new categories that they're using for all of that stuff, was how I read through that. But we will still have our zones and our zoning UDR and everything with that at this point.
We also have the opportunity to change these maps and he said they would likely go along with us if it's minor changes.
This is our chance right now to offer them.
Yeah, we can shape, right.
Saying we want this to follow, like one of the conversations was following the same distinction between the zones of the properties or not along Mountain Street and some of those other things like that.
Right.
If we don't offer any comment, they're gonna still adopt something on this one way or the other.
Yeah, I get that.
Which I would say is these draft maps.
Yes.
Yeah. We might want to make some changes there, but of course, there's this tier 1B thing to consider, which is different than what we're talking about right now.
Correct. Right now, we're just talking about our future land use maps.
Yeah.
That are the regional planning commission's maps.
So go ahead.
I will say that the planned growth area that is where the tier 1B exemption would be if we decide to opt in. If we don't decide to opt in, then it's still the planned growth area, just they don't get to use the exemption.
So I think Shannon, from what I'm hearing from you is the state has enacted this statute, has charged regional planning with coming up with these maps. We, as a town, can continue developing maps as we see fit. However, when we go to regional planning review, they may pass comment as to whether it fits their maps. That's where the rub could come in.
Okay,
Like if we have everything in this planned growth area and now we wanna say, oh no, it's not 4 units per acre anymore, it's all 2, they're gonna say, no, that doesn't match with your regional plan, so. The one thing I noticed with this proposed, the draft FLU, is that it is broader than what we have for our general village planning area in terms of the zones of that, because it does cross into some of the rural agricultural 2 and 5 sections. That's my only concern with those areas that are split by zones, but within the designated planned growth area, what that would mean for that.
So you're comparing the Bristol zoning map with the draft FLUs?
Generally, yes. Because it seemed, it expanded to incorporate all of those parcels which crossed it previously. That appears to be the difference. If you look at the current FLU north of Plank Road compared to the draft FLU, it just encompasses the entire parcel instead of cutting it off. So I don't know if that makes any difference or not.
The zoning would still apply for the district underlying. So if the select board does opt in, and let's say it's near J Drive, where it's now up to 50, but if they're in the section of that parcel that's, I believe, in RA5, they would still be following the RA5 density
As it sits today.
as it sits today.
So to your comment, Rob, some of that makes sense. I guess on the Plank Road side, to me, the thing that doesn't make sense to me is on the top right, you've got Lower Meadow Lane, Mountain Street, and then there's a whole big block that has no.
That appears to be in conservation originally.
And it is,
Yeah.
but there's no existing roads or anything to those lots.
Yeah. They don't appear to be extending into the village residential or the HDR. Based on the mapping we have, it appears like those are outside of that boundary of those and outside the boundary of our current FLU planned growth area or regional center is what it was termed before.
thank you for making that bigger.
Probably, it's just, these are my concern is the unintended consequences of this. When we start talking about state permitting coming into play. And some development project that is now deemed as a public utility commission sort of thing, that there isn't really much local review, because they say, yeah, it checks all the boxes, that it meets with the local plan and intent, and now something that was overlooked of something in the conservation district is now a 50 unit development. That's my concern. I'm more skeptical than I probably need to be.
No, you're right.
So
You're right.
do we want to go back and tell regional planning that we want to keep the mountain? Call it the Mountain Street boundary?
Yeah, anything that's in the conservation, completely, entirely in the conservation district should not be included in the planned growth area.
Completely, entirely, or partially? Cause you've got some that
A
are,
lot of partial.
so
Yeah.
there's some partials here too.
There are some partials, and I think that think that's what Adam said, was they expanded to try to include the entire parcel as part of that instead of
Yeah,
down the middle of it.
definitely.
And I get that zoning will still apply, but it's,
Well, the big one.
I don't agree with including ones that aren't even
It's-
crossing
I
it.
mean, like, this is my property here. I mean, that's not likely to get developed. I mean, even when I sell it to somebody else or whatever happens, it's like, I mean, it would be nuts, but. no,
Well,
what-
and that's where Act 250 would come in and say
Yeah,
it's too
but
steep.
here,
So-
I don't know about this area so well. That looks like too big of
I
an
think-
area.
Yeah, and I think anything you get you don't have to get too many feet off Mountain Street before it
Yeah,
starts doing that.
Well,
you're gonna be restricted anyway.
Well, we don't, but you don't wanna mislead either.
Yeah, I like the idea of conservation zone, like where it should be, and why does it have to be the entire parcel? I don't know.
So do we,
Anyway, what's wrong with you? I think you agree with that one, right? Yeah, go ahead.
so Slim is suggesting that if it's in conservation, let me say what I think you said. If it's in conservation now, it should not be part of the,
It shouldn't be changed anyway, just to fit arbitrary border lines that now exist in ownership.
is there any comment to that?
I,
I just want to, I think I agree with Slim on this one.
Okay,
so would that mean we would ask them to hold the arbitrary line that bisects some of those lots that extend further away from Mountain Street instead of including the entire parcel in that mapped planned growth area?
Well, okay, maybe I misunderstood, but it sounded like the current lines that are drawn are not necessarily arbitrary, but that including the entire parcel would be arbitrary.
I see it too. Why do we draw those lines for some reason? I mean, on this area, I understand the reason. Here, I'm not so sure of the reason. This is like a big cornfield, et cetera, right? And
And they included because part of that parcel is in there.
yeah, so
And
now,
in this zone of our,
yeah, so I see,
That's why
but
they-
it makes some. I
it's
don't,
easier to follow that than some line that kind of goes through
Yeah.
the middle of the parcel.
but I don't know if conditions change here, you know, the conditions really change from here to there. You have a big change of condition
So it's
on Mountain Street. I mean, like he's saying, it goes from, yeah.
right. I think with this, we just gotta be on board of we want this limit of the zones to be the boundary, or anything that crosses it is included in this planned growth area. That's kind of the option of what we're talking about right now. Right?
Well, I didn't quite get that, but it sounds like we're saying, let's leave our conservation zone boundaries alone. I mean, the way they are.
We're not changing.
Well, they do change it here pretty clearly, right? In all sense, the planned growth area.
Well, this does not change. Well, it changes this.
Yeah.
It doesn't change that.
Doesn't change this one.
No, it does not change our local zoning
today.
today.
Did it?
That was my question that I didn't get an answer to. Of how far removed from state zoning are we?
Yeah, right, we don't know, but I personally, I'd say resist, I mean, you know, on this one. If it, whatever we can do.
Is there? So I think we're talking two things. We're talking along the mountain. But we're also talking north of, or is that north or west of Plank Road?
That's north.
That's north, yeah.
That north of Plank?
Yeah, this is oriented north.
So let's talk about along the mountain conservation. Is there anybody that would have a heartburn if we went back to regional planning and said, keep the conservation? Whatever the term is, boundary,
District.
district boundary. Okay, we'll do.
Okay with that.
Now on north of Plank Road,
Mm, mm.
is there a concern? Or is there an opinion as to going from the current? Or is it? Their current FLU, which chops right across. Is that the same as ours? No, it's.
No.
Yeah, it's a little
Here's a
different.
little bigger.
And that's what I was looking for the actual. Village planning area boundary map. That's what I was looking for to compare that.
That's the next one. Is it the next one down? Nope.
Cause I couldn't remember if it followed the village residential north of Plank Road. And over, or if it was different than that.
If you scroll down, you get down to the, if AZ can scroll down for you, it does, it looks like to me, all they did is expand it. They included any parcel we crossed with ours. If it was if ours was already in there, they just expanded it to include it all the way around. So it didn't cut the parcel in half.
Yeah.
Right.
Does that make sense? That's the way I read that. They didn't
Yeah.
really spoke much, expanded it as they said, well, this parcel's here, we're not gonna have half of it in this zone and the other half in that zone.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, I don't know. So in their draft FLUs, if I'm hearing correctly, people are not. Are kind of okay with going to boundaries on that, but up on North Street, at the top of the page, there's three lots for some reason they didn't include.
Because I believe those are outside of the village planning area and don't cross it, but that large lot comes back, this is all inclusive and comes back out to North Street around them. Cause they're in the RA2 district outside of the village planning area.
But it just seems like you're almost spot zoning there or something there.
Yeah,
You'd have to put in
that's
the-
where it gets tricky with these to include all of it. It's ease of this entire parcel is in the.
Okay,
The assumption I think we're all working under is that our zoning, the most restrictive or where it is more restrictive would still apply. To whatever takes place in the future there.
that's true.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. So
Weird there.
if I understand north of Plank Road, we're okay with adopting property lines for the draft FLU?
I am, yes.
So,
Looks like the
okay,
Appropriate place to have a growth. We're gonna have it.
and now, I mean, this is really the impactful part of this whole 181 stuff, but is there anything townwide with the townwide lot maps that we want to comment on? Or back up, is there anything more with the village district that we haven't talked about?
Well, they expanded it all the way out to 116, right?
That's right. We were, that was the. All right, go ahead.
The whole thing there. That might be okay.
Most of where they expanded to 116 and where they expanded up along Burpee is in the commercial district where housing is not allowed currently. So again, the zoning regulations would come in. So just because it's in that area doesn't mean a developer could come in and go, oh, 50 units right next to South 116 because that's in the commercial district.
That's where we were talking previously about that. Why isn't that an enterprise area? Like just south of there? Instead of planned growth area, since it is zoned as commercial.
But
And the other general discussion was the hamlet, which I think we were talking about possibly Rocky Dale. But I wasn't sure on that one.
there was a few places townwide and I got the impression from Adam when we talked about it, he just said, oh, those would be hamlets and it didn't sound like there was any consequence to how, other than how you put a term on it.
Right, made it sound that
But,
way.
yeah,
But they should be then, yeah, because those are still two or three. Or two or three. That's the, sorry. So the planned growth area is tier 1A. 2 or 1B, right?
I think
As opposed to enterprise area, which is just tier 2. So that means that tier 2 is Act 250, like traditional Act 250 permitting, I believe. So I don't know if there's any benefit.
to looking out townwide, you're getting that? Or-
Right, to having enterprise area over planned growth area. Because that enterprise area, the only enterprise area that appears to be mapped is the sand or gravel pit at the south end of town, right on the Middlebury border, and the A. Johnson parcel. That's what it appears to.
So when they talk about enterprise area, they're kind of, would they be talking about something more than just mixed commercial, light business? And this is like something that's got a lot more impact to it, maybe.
Yeah. Heavier industry. Yes.
Yeah, it talks about the first line of it talks about regional or business parks not part of, it talks about not things that are not part of the planned growth area. So if it's in the planned growth area, that's one thing, but if it's outside of it for business development, industrial. And restrictions on housing, so. And I don't know if they didn't break out our commercial zone because of the size of it. Generally there's some smaller parcels there, that sort of stuff, as opposed to some of these bigger tracts of land.
Yeah, I think the way they're zoned, at least zoned or used right now is very light.
Yeah.
Light use, if you will. So am I hearing any changes to borders townwide? Or changes to the map townwide? So I believe what I've heard is we want to, we have one comment, and that is in the planned growth area to follow the existing conservation zone district boundary along Mountain Street. Is everybody in agreement of that?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Yes,
was easy. Maybe.
Okay, that would include the ones that
I think it
that
would,
weren't in the
Far-
area
Yeah,
previously at all.
they're sort of next to Mountain Street, but
yeah, they gotta be just pretty steep.
Just separate woodlots.
They look pretty flat on paper.
Yeah.
Okay,
I'll let Adam know.
you want, okay, you wanna shoot him off an email then?
Yeah, I can just send him an email. I gotta ask him some more questions about ADUs anyways.
Okay. What's next on the agenda? Is. We got through that administrative matters. We've got minutes to approve from the July meeting. They're here somewhere. Hopefully anybody's looked at them. Any comments? I'll entertain a motion to approve.
I'll second.
Will you make the motion?
Are you going to make the motion? Okay, motion to approve.
Rob seconds, Shannon makes the motion. All those in favor, any discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
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 Anybody opposed? Okay. Next we've got AZ's June report.
It's not a lot of like actual permits been approved recently. Got some DRB cases, have two conditional uses and a subdivision. Have another conditional use coming up in September. That garage that you see is pending. That is pending needing a variance that will also be going to the DRB. That property is bounded by a perennial stream and has to meet a 50-foot setback, as well as the front yard setback, and cannot meet either. So that's a fun one. But it's been pretty busy just answering questions in the zoning office, but been working on fleshing out permit review processes and still working on new applications for folks to differentiate between what's a general permit, like a by right for a shed, versus if you're going to be doing like a DRB application, as there's different requirements for that. Yeah, nothing exciting right now.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I think that brings us I didn't see any miscellaneous correspondence, so I guess that brings us to public comment. Any public comment? I can't see the
Gallery.
gallery now. That's because it's in here saying that and I'm the one that's the problem.
Jim, do you have anything to say?
Hearing no public comment, I'll move for adjournment. Anybody want to make a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn?
Slim made it. You want to second it?
I'll second.
Okay, all those approved, say aye.
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 Opposed? Thank you.
Good night, all.
Okay, thank you.
Good night.
Going on.